A very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for attending today's webinar. My name is Rahul Prakash, and on behalf of the in-house community, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's discussion, which is about shaping a rewarding career through legal consulting. And today's presentation will give you a truly global perspective on legal consulting as a career. We have speakers and consultants today who are from Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, UK, and the US. Today's discussion is co-hosted by Peerpoint, which is a global flexible resourcing platform connecting the best consultant lawyers with world-leading organizations, and it's supported by the law firm Allen and Overy. We would like to make today's webinar quite interactive. So we encourage you all to send any questions or comments that you may have during the presentation. You can type them into the Q&A box in the Zoom platform. It'll be on the right of your screen. And if you do so, we'll share them with our presenters who will either take them up during the webinar, or if we are running out of time, they will be very happy to answer them later on by email. And we'll keep your details anonymous when we are sharing your questions or your comments. So please feel free to send in those questions or comments. It's now my pleasure to introduce Carolyn Aldis, as you can see her on your screen. Carolyn is the Managing Director of Peerpoint and co-leads the business with Ben Williams. She's passionate about helping lawyers to take control of their careers, but in equal measure, helping clients access the skills and expertise of talented lawyers to meet their short-term resourcing needs. So that's enough from me. Over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Rahul. And thank you so much to the in-house community for co-partnering with us to host this event. We're delighted to be with you, whether it's in your office or your home office at the moment, or on your kitchen table. So webinars have really become part of our lives. So thank you for joining us today. As Rahul mentioned, I'm the Managing Director of Peerpoint, which is one of the alternative or new law businesses from Allen & Overy. And it's a business that's been operating for 7 years and was built really to support lawyers to take control of their career, to make law healthier, to make law something that talented lawyers could do on their own terms. So throughout today's conversation, we'll talk about control, about career advancement, about balancing outside interests with your legal career. And we have a handful of Peerpoint consultants who work with us. They represent how Peerpoint operates. They represent where we operate from. So as Rahul said, we've got the globe covered, and it reflects the attendees for today. We are incredibly passionate about lawyers' careers and helping lawyers find control. So over today's conversation, I hope you hear that. I hope you hear how we support lawyers to do that, whether it be through the career coaching. In a moment, I'll introduce Donna Titley, who leads that part of our business, whether it's having the backing and support of Allen & Overy, so call back to base. We really don't believe in Googling an answer. We don't place a consultant out and leave them to their own devices. Very much supported by the firm and a part of a community, as you are an in-house community. And we believe that's such an important thing if you're going to consider having a legal consulting career. As the Peerpoint evolution has occurred, we have broadened the skills and experience that's available on our panel So we now have people with legal project management skills or legal operations function experience, and increasingly legal tech. So that really reflects where in-house teams are in relation to their evolution as well. Finally, we operate in Sydney, which is where I'm dialing in from. Well, shortly, when I hand to Donna and Georgiana, they're in Hong Kong. We're also in Singapore and in London. But last year, we actually placed consultants into 13 different jurisdictions. So as COVID has proved, we can work anywhere and our consultants do that. And it does mean that we support clients in the Middle East and also in the US. So Donna, I think it's time for me to introduce you. Donna Titley is our talent manager. She works as the central part of the Peerpoint proposition, which is working with consultants when they come and speak to us about their career plans and what their options are. And Donna works on that journey with those people, thinking about whether consultants are the right thing for them at the moment or whether it might be something they might come back to in due course. So Donna's going to lead a conversation with 7 of our consultants who all bring really different perspectives. So thank you initially to our consultants for joining us, and over to you, Donna.
Thanks, Carolyn. Welcome everyone to our roundtable today. We're really happy to have so many people joining us. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to 7 of our consultants about their careers, both as lawyers and as legal consultants with us. I'm really interested in talking to them about why they became consultants. What was it that drove them into this kind of career, and how consulting has helped them to build the kind of career that they want, that makes them happy, that gives them career satisfaction, which I really think is at the heart of building a successful career. I'm also really interested in finding out from their perspective what their different experiences have been, because we've got people joining us from all over the world, and finding out what is happening in different geographies, different markets, and seeing how their market is moving and changing and maturing. Following the discussion that I'm going to have with our consultants, we're then going to move on to a Q&A, which is going to be hosted by Georgiana, who's our Business and Resourcing Executive in Asia. If you have a question for any of the consultants, it could be one person in particular, or it could be for people generally, please feel free to submit those. As Rahul said, we'd love this to be as interactive as possible. We want to hear from you, hear what you're interested in learning more about. So without further ado, I'd like you to meet our 7 panelists today. We have with us Amrik Tumba, Jennifer Yu, Anaik Summers, Jane Houston, Anamit Vasink, Sahar Kianfa, and Greg Kay, who are joining us from really every corner of the world. We've got Australia covered, Hong Kong, Singapore, the UK and the US. And I think just having that variety of people from so many corners, but also with a huge amount of experience, who are at different stages of their own careers as lawyers and as consultants. So first of all, I think it'd be great to find out a little bit more about each of them, and who they are, what they do, where they are, what they're working on currently, and why they chose to become lawyers, because I think a lot of people on reflection may have forgotten why they chose this career. So first of all, Amrik, over to you, please.
Hi, Donna, and hi, everybody who's joining the call. As Donna mentioned, my name's Amrik Tumba. It's a great privilege for me to be able to speaking to so many of you about my career path, and I really hope that you guys get as much as you're looking to get out of this session. I'm currently based in London. In terms of my legal career, I come from a corporate M&A background, specializing in investment banking law. So I've worked for banks for a very long time. And in 2017, I joined the Peerpoint panel in Sydney. Now, as I mentioned, I'm based in London. And whilst on the Peerpoint panel, I've been able to perform a number of assignments, including repeat assignments at large international banks. They've all been so wonderful in so many different ways, which hopefully we'll have an opportunity to go on to describe in a bit more detail. As an aside, I am also an actor, which is one of the principal reasons behind me taking a slightly alternative career path on my legal journey. And I've been an actor since joining the Peerpoint panel. And in fact, for the very first time since lockdown, I was on set last week on Monday, and it was a very interesting experience. A lot has changed on set, and hopefully I'll be able to explore with you guys what I've been able to achieve, both as a lawyer and as an actor on my Peerpoint journey.
Fantastic. Thanks, Amrik. I think you're a great example of somebody who has two very clearly defined careers going along at the same time, but it is how you combine those both, which is really inspiring and actually really fun as well to hear about. Jennifer, can I ask you, tell us a bit more about yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Yu, and I'm based in Hong Kong. My career path hasn't been as colorful as Amrik, but I actually trained and qualified with Overy, Hong Kong, and I specialize in the debt capital markets. And I was with A&O for 6 years before I left to help with my family business, which is largely based in China, where I gained more exposure to general corporate matters. And but it required extensive traveling. So for personal reasons, I wanted to cut back on the travel, but with COVID, no one is able to travel now anyways, but I decided to cut back and settle down. So after speaking to one of my partners, I wasn't very prepared to go back full on as a full-time lawyer. So we came up with a part-time role attached to the ICM team in Hong Kong, working for my old team, where I work on active transactions and also knowledge development, but I would not face clients as much as other associates on the team. That's how we try to make things work as a part-time basis. And I've only started since March, so I'm quite new on the scene for legal consulting. And question on why I wanted to become a lawyer is something that I thought about maybe 10 years ago when I was doing my university apps. I think I'm good with language and I'm quite good at logic, analytical thinking. So law is something that combines both. And I guess the tipping balance is my parents' clearly approval of a professional career. So yeah, now here I am.
That's great, and I think a lot of us can reflect on that parental approval of what we do with our careers, but especially as a lawyer, I think that gets the high parental approval rating. Thank you, Jennifer. I think it would be great later on to hear more about how you found that balance, how you're finding it now since you've been back working for the last few months, and how you're making that work so that you're still doing interesting work, but you're able to manage the timing as well. Jane, I'm gonna send us over to Singapore to join you.
Hi everyone, it's great to be joining you all here via this forum. So as Donna mentioned, I'm Jane Houston. I'm based in Singapore. I'm originally from New Zealand, as some of you may be able to tell from my accent. So that's where I studied law and also commerce. So I had those two pathways open to me when I was studying. I was lucky enough to get a law job, so I took the job, and nearly 20 years later, here I am. So that's really how I became a lawyer. What do I actually do for my day job? One of the reasons I became a banking and finance lawyer was, at the time, it was a fairly portable area of practice. So I wanted to travel and be able to not just confine myself to New Zealand. So that, after working in New Zealand for a year, I then moved to Sydney, where I practiced with some large Australian firms for 4 or 5 years. And then I moved here, and again, I wanted to move on to Asia. So I moved here to Singapore, and I've been here ever since. And I've been in private practice with a number of different US firms during my time here in Singapore, all the time doing banking and finance type work, and the whole spectrum of work at that. But that said, I've always been quite fascinated by business, and I've always wanted to have a business of my own and try other things outside of the law. So in 2018, the opportunity came up to sort of get more involved with a family coffee business. So I took that opportunity, but it was a frightening kind of decision in a way to throw away all these years of my professional career. And I didn't know how the business would turn out or anything like that. There was a lot of risk associated, and as a lawyer, I tend to be somewhat risk averse. So I kind of wanted to hedge my bets, and Peerpoint offered me that great opportunity to actually go off and try other things and give me the flexibility to have more control over my career than a private practice career, but at the same time still explore more in the law. And one of the issues around my own career had been very private practice focused. I'd never even as much as been on a secondment. And so I wanted to experience what it was like to be an in-house lawyer as well, because that was something I'd never done before. And thanks to Peerpoint, I have been working for a French bank. So I joined the bank in October of last year, and I've had a couple of extensions, and I remain with the bank today. So that's my career in a nutshell.
Fantastic. So it sounds like, Jane, you took that decision quite early on in terms of making sure you had a really flexible, portable career.
Well, that's probably one of the reasons I chose transactional law as opposed to, say, litigation, which I was told, but I'm not sure if it's true or not, would sort of limit me more to a particular jurisdiction. But I can't really comment on whether that's accurate or not.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jane. I'm going to take us over to Oz now, to Greg.
Hello, how are you all? Hope you're all enjoying it so far. I'm Greg Kay. I'm based over in Sydney, Australia, but from my accent, you can tell I'm from England, maybe. Some people say I'm sounding Australian these days. I've been in Australia since 2007. I started a family here, so I'm here to stay. So I'm based in Sydney with my family. And I've had a long career, perhaps spanning about 20 years, about half and half now in London and Sydney, private practice and in-house, focusing a lot on corporate and commercial work. I have been in negotiated transactions of various types throughout my whole career, from M&A to now getting into the area more of IT vendor contracts. So I've been a consultant for about 2 years. With Peerpoint, I've done a couple of placements. They start off as a few months, and it seems that you build relationships and circumstances dictate that they require more of your services. So I've almost spent a year with one, and will be coming close to 6-7 months with the other, going till the end of the year. On the current placement. The current placement is an interesting one for me because it's with an IT provider, solutions provider. It's a global company based in US, and they have offices across the globe. They've got an ANZ, Australia, New Zealand division, and they need a counsel to sit and run that aspect of it. So that's the job that I'm backfilling for someone who's been off for about a year. It's a very interesting story how you get into these roles, but it's also a really good opportunity for me because, as I see it, IT is a massively growing area, and so is financial services. So this gives me an opportunity to really develop some new learning and skills and get myself into those sorts of organizations and expand and grow as a lawyer. Why did I become a lawyer? Because it's going back too far. I'll probably throw it in, my grandfather was a lawyer, and my mother thought it would be a good idea because she thought I perhaps may have inherited his soul as he passed away when I was born. That's a bit of an obscure one. But I think at the end of the day, I became a lawyer because it's a problem-solving, analytical thing. I'm quite a scientific person, but also it allows you to really understand how things work and how the world works in a large part of the world that we live in, the corporate and commercial world. So I've always found the area interesting. And also as a service provider, it's quite a good one to be in. you have clients, you have people who you advise and you help, and they're usually quite grateful, hopefully, if they are, otherwise you stop doing work for them. So yeah, I think my reasons for being a lawyer are still the same, and being with, as a consultant, being with people like Peerpoint allows you to do more of that kind of thing rather than be stuck in one long role. And I'll say that quite briefly to finish. So my last role that I did before being a consultant was for 7 years in-house with a particular company. And a lot of you guys in-house, I imagine, will be feeling a similar career path to what I felt when I was in my in-house role. You hit a glass ceiling when you've been working there for a while, and you either enjoy that and you stay there and it's all great, or you get bored and you decide whether or not chasing GC roles is right for you. I'm not a hugely political person, so it wasn't something I aspired to in a large organization, perhaps for a smaller one. So, it's a natural step to be able to become a consultant and move around while still having the ability to embed yourself as an in-house lawyer.
Fantastic. Greg, I think you covered some really, really great points throughout that about aspirations and career development and what matters, and also how what matters to us changes as we go throughout our career. And that's, that flexibility, allowing yourself to continue to flex, to think, I've got to this point in my career, now what comes next? And maybe not just following the typical path, kind of looking outside and looking for other opportunities. Geographically, we're gonna continue on our world tour, and I'm gonna go over to Sahar, who is the furthest away from me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sahar Kianfar, and I'm in California at the moment. And I've been practicing law for about 15 years and have been a Peerpoint consultant for about 5 of those years. I'm US qualified, but have primarily been practicing in London. Although, have been spending quite a good percentage of my time since becoming a consultant in California as well. And that's the primary reason, one of the reasons why I shifted into consultancy. My practice has always focused on capital markets or corporate, but I've been lucky enough to sort of dabble in a wide range of different areas within M&A and litigation as well. And the reason I became a lawyer is so I did a lot of tech programming work during the sort of .com era. And I really enjoyed sort of the high caliber, exciting work, but wanted to be part of an older profession, a more traditional profession, and law was the sort of right personality fit for me. Luckily my parents are sort of the California hippies, so they just wanted me to be happy. No pressure from them. And the reason I went into consultancy is, I guess, where I was in my career and where I was in terms of, wanting to have children and expand my family, sort of came at a crossroads for me. And, during my first maternity leave, when I was in private practice, I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of women, mothers who were lawyers or in other professions, and listening to sort of the struggles and the successes that people have had in terms of maintaining a high caliber career while still being able to enjoy the moments with their children and not feeling like they're missing out, particularly when they're younger. And consultancy was a way for me to, initially it was a way for me to sort of make sure I stayed relevant, so that when I did want to engage fully in a legal practice once my kids were older, I could do so. But what it's become is actually a way for me to get the best of both worlds and really have a career at the caliber that is really fulfilling, while still spending quite a lot of time active. If it's sort of a litmus test, when I was in private practice on my first maternity leave, I took a year and a half, almost 2 years maternity leave. But when I was a consultant on maternity leave, I only took about a month and a half or 2 months, because I was just able to sort of balance my life and my career in that way.
Thank you. That's, I know we have a lot of parents, fathers and mothers, who are using consultancy as a way of balancing their careers and being able to take time in different ways. Working flexibly can mean different things to different people. Sometimes it's about taking time off when the children are small. It can be as they get bigger, taking time away when it's the school holidays, etc. Let's heading on with the family theme. Anaik, I know that you have a young family, so I'm going to pass to you in Hong Kong.
Thanks very much, Donna. Hi, everybody. My name's Anaik Summers. I'm based in Hong Kong. And yes, following on from Sahir there, I have a just coming to the end of my second maternity. So very similar story where I'm starting out. Unlike everybody here who's been doing Peerpoint for a little while, I'm brand new. And I'm starting my first assignment tomorrow. So I'm very excited. But again, it's very good because I'm going in on a part-time basis, 3 days a week. So it's, again, that kind of shows the flexibility. We're starting it with a young family. So I'm very excited about that. By background, I'm a corporate M&A commercial lawyer, and I've worked both in-house and in private practice originally. And then your question of why I originally became a lawyer. I did a business degree first, but felt I wanted to do something else, didn't really know what that next step was. So while I was doing a year out, found out about being able to convert into law, and so really enjoyed it. I think when I look back, I probably didn't realize this at the time, but I do like the professional status of being a lawyer. I like the high-profile cases that you work on and the types of the impact you can have with the business, and that's what I really enjoyed. So yeah, and so coming into consultancy, I'm hoping to get all the benefits everyone's describing here. It gives me that flexibility going forward.
Thanks, Anaik. And we're very excited too that you'll be starting tomorrow. We caught you just at the right time to do this. And heading over from Hong Kong to Singapore to Annemiek.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this talk, basically. My name is Annemiek. I'm Dutch qualified, so it's very possible to be civil law qualified and still work for Peerpoint. I've been in Singapore for almost 3 years now, and I've been working with Peerpoint for 2 years, and I think I'm the Benjamin of this group because I'm only 5.5 years PQE. And so I'm not really specialized in anything. I see myself as like a general corporate lawyer, but there's been quite a demand for that as well because you're kind of mid-level trained, but you can still operate quite independently. And you've got a pretty broad experience still. So that's actually worked out great for me. The reason I really like to work for Peerpoint is that I've lived in 3 countries over the last 3 years as well. So I wanted to take a step back and just take a breather and see, okay, how can I still maintain professional growth, but then also have room to breathe, basically, and to live a little, because I come from an M&A background. And it's been fantastic. But I'm also, for speaking about young families, I'm well on track to have 2 babies in 14 months. So I've been busy with that as well. So it's very nice to have that sense of flexibility and then still be able to maintain like a strong professional track record. My latest assignment was with, I think Peerpoint Singapore likes French banks. I was also with the French bank, where I did basically banking, obviously, which I'm not trained in at all, but that went very well because, you know, having the backing of A&O is just wonderful and they really support you in that sense. So that helped me greatly, and I've grown so much, I think, as a mid-level lawyer in terms of confidence and knowledge, and yeah, you're just a bit more well-rounded actually than I would be sitting somewhere in in private practice in a cubicle, basically.
Thanks, Annemiek. While I've got you, I really wanted to ask you, do you think that some types of work are better to do as a consultant when you're working on a consultant basis?
Thanks, Anna. That's actually a very interesting question. My experience is that the assignment I just came out of was a very defined assignment. And I think you can add a bit more value when you just come in as like, well, you're the outsider in the beginning, really. And it all kind of solves very quickly and merges very quickly. But you come in with like basically a different outlook on the business. So this was like a very defined special project, and I think that those kind of more change management projects are very well suited for a consultant, because you take your own perspective and you don't take for granted whatever is happening in this company, because some companies, they've been doing things for like the same things for 10 years and people just do them because they've always done them. And then you come in and you start to ask those questions. Like, why are you doing this? Could you please explain me? Because I don't know. And I think, well, with the bank I joined, no one really had asked that question for quite some time. So they were quite happy to get some perspective in and to basically reevaluate themselves as well. So I think those kind of, that kind of work is very well suited. Yeah.
I mean, it also sounds like from a consulting perspective that you're kind of being truly consultative. You're really asking questions. You're really kind of coming in and looking at it with a fresh pair of eyes and offering opinions as well, which, you know, is part of that kind of consulting experience. And I'm just wondering, Jennifer, as well, with you returning and you're working working flexibly part-time, how have you managed that in terms of, you spoke earlier on about the kinds of work that you're focused on?
I think over the past 6 months, I've taken on active work on active deals, and the arrangement that we came up with is for me to help with drafting documents and not so much as fronting the clients. I think a lot of associates run into the problem of during the day they get phone calls all the time, so they can't really sit down for 15 minutes not being interrupted by phone call or urgent email or WeChat from a client. So yeah, and they're usually very urgent, like you need to respond ASAP with technology and Wi-Fi speed these days. So so they don't have the time during the day to sit down and really do the groundwork. So I help on that front, and I also pick up like post-closing matters, which interesting enough, a lot of banks actually put more emphasis on post-closing matters. So we've had clients chase us for originals and that sort of, for risk management perspective, actually. So I help out a lot on that front, and also for knowledge development. So when my colleagues are more tied up with client-facing work, I help to do the background work. So that has been working more a bit better now. Like we're getting the hang of it, and I try to give them a rundown of what I've been doing every week, so they know where I'm up to and they can pick up when I'm off. Yeah.
I was going to ask, actually, Jennifer, that's a really good point. What have the challenges been? Have there been any challenges?
Yep. Actually, when I first got back on, I needed more time to get back on track with all the legal updates and the reading SFP's legal knowledge, like learning myself. I think there's a period of time where I needed more time to do tasks. So I tried to split the time between self-learning and actual client billable work. And we also came up with a system where each task would be allocated a specific estimated time that I'm expected to complete the task within. So I'm trying to do the cost control from that perspective.
That sounds like a good way of planning as well. Planning ahead. Sahar, I'd really like to know more about your balance. So in terms of your how you're creating your career satisfaction, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so for me, it's really about, you know, being able to do sort of the high caliber, the sort of big capital markets deals, and really at the level that I'm qualified at, sort of at a senior level. And you know, when I shifted into consultancy, it's interesting to hear how different people manage and act in that role. For me, it's I've had the same client. It's always been Allen and Overy London securitization team, and I've used it as a way of managing my billable hours and capacity. So rather than sort of taking complete time off, I'll sort of, you know, talk to the other partners in the team and look at the deals that I'm working on, sort of agree to always act in a US consultant's capacity for the team, but then step away from deal work as and when I sort of need to take that away. And having that flexibility has been extremely rewarding for me, particularly being able to sort of work from California when I want to, or work from different locations, and not having that need to, you know, need for FaceTime or need to be physically in the office as sort of part of the arrangement has been exceptionally fulfilling for me.
Gosh, yeah, geographically, I mean, I think one of the things that strikes me whenever I'm speaking to consultants and the 7 consultants, you guys all together today, is just a real reminder of how geographically mobile we all are. And, you know, all of us are, I think almost all of us here are living or working in a different place to perhaps where we were brought up, or we have spent time living and working in different locations. So that speaks volumes about the flexibility of geographical flexibility of a career in law. Amrik, your flexibility is a little different because you have 2 quite different careers that you're running alongside each other. So tell me, how do you make that work?
Surprisingly, it's worked quite effectively. And I think one of the reasons why it works so well is that we adopt great openness and honesty with prospective clients when we first talk about potential assignments with them. An example would be, in fact, all interviews that I've had through Peerpoint with clients, one of the first things that comes up is my career as an actor. And naturally, a client will want to know how those demands will potentially impact your work as a lawyer with them. And you adopt a great degree of honesty, and you talk about your auditions and the fact that if I have an audition for, say, a TV commercial or a drama, I will be back in the office within an hour. I know in London, for example, all the casting studios are in central London, so I will be back in my seat within an hour. I talk to them about plays that I've been in or plays that I'm rehearsing for at some point in the future after my assignment comes to an end. And in my case, the truth has been that they have thoroughly enjoyed exploring my acting career. And often, once I've spoken to them about this outside interest, they wanted to assist me. And all the clients that I've worked for have categorically said, if you have an audition, you must go. Of course, the work has to be completed, and of course, we'll arrive at agreements as to how that gets done, particularly with time-sensitive work. But we want to encourage you on this journey without exception. And I've worked for, I think, 5 clients whilst at Peerpoint. The only caveat that they have added on that is that I have to tell them about my audition when I get back to the office. But it's worked really well. And I genuinely believe that if you have an outside interest, whether that's children, whether it's acting, whether it's a sport or anything, if you come with openness and honesty, you will be surprised as to how flexible clients will be to get you in their doors. Other examples have been assignments which were meant to be for full-time, for somebody on a full-time basis, which we've been able to negotiate on a part-time basis, or assignments which were maternity covers, which I was able to do over a 3-month or a 4-month period, as opposed to a 9-month period. So I think openness and honesty and a real value of what you have to bring to the table can really help you engineer what works for you and also for your client.
So that really touches upon that kind of self-knowledge, knowing what you bring to the table, understanding what your own skill set is. And something else that that keeps coming up for me is hearing about the communication side. That you know, it's something that Jennifer mentioned, Sahar, yourself, is that how important it is to talk to the client that you're working with, and to ask questions and to be really engaged in what you're working on, so that you can, whilst you may be juggling between two different things, that you can provide, and that could be two different types of work, or it could be juggling with being in different geographic locations and differences in timing. But it's that need to keep that kind of communication really open.
I would just add that, you know, in particular, it's also, you know, delivering for the client as well. I feel like if you're open with your communication and you absolutely deliver on their needs, what you can do in terms of your own flexibility, you know, that's really the sort of key to being able to then otherwise sort of manage and be as flexible as you want to be. That if you're delivering and you're open, you know, it's lets you do a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So really kind of building those client relationships. Fantastic. Now, I'm really interested in thinking a little bit more about the different markets that you guys are working in, because it is such a wide range, and really thinking about how legal consulting sits in the market that you're currently working in the geographic market that you're working in, and how common maybe, or how easy it is to be a legal consultant. So I'm going to ask Jane first. You're in Singapore. How do you think that the legal consulting market is in Singapore?
I think that's a great question, and I think I couldn't represent the whole of the market, but I would say it's a developing market. And even in the time that I have been with Peerpoint, or before I even started on this journey, I see that it has developed further in that time, so that when I speak to people, more and more people understand what I'm doing, and I explain to them the structure, how things work. There is as time's gone on, there's been a much greater appreciation of how that works. But again, I wouldn't say it's a fully established or fully developed or fully understood situation in Singapore, but I definitely see it as evolving, and it's definitely moving, and certainly within the legal space, there's a lot more understanding of it than even, say, 2 years ago when I started out on this journey.
And the big question is, of course, do your parents know what you do?
Yes, they do, actually. I was slightly fortunate in that one of my cousins is actually a consultant in the IT space. So in my family, there had been a cousin who'd been consulting for more than 10 years, and that's just how he chooses to you know, run his professional career, and he loves it, and he was actually a very strong advocate for it. And before I started on this path, I spoke to him, and he said it's excellent, you won't regret it. So here I am.
Did he give you any advice in terms of, you know, from his perspective as an IT consultant to moving, you know, what consultancy meant?
He explained he does it in New Zealand, and he's an SAP consultant, but he'd been doing it for, I think, actually more than 15 years. And he said he'd had plenty of opportunities to go back and become a full-time employee at the organisations where he was consulting, but in fact he preferred to be out on his own, so that he could have the flexibility, the freedom that consulting gives you, which he wouldn't have otherwise had. So in his case, he thoroughly recommended it, and I would say I'm very pleased that I've chosen this path as well.
Fantastic. So you had somebody who could give you that insight.
I did,
which
so
is
that
brilliant.
was excellent. Yes.
Yeah. Greg, I'm going to move over to Oz. How about from your perspective, what do you think the legal consulting market is like in Australia?
I think it's relatively mature. I mean, when I was an in-house lawyer, I used legal contractors, consultants. I think Peerpoint has a slightly different twist on seconding contracted lawyers. They're more consultant based in the title, and I think there's a difference there.
What do you think the difference is, Greg?
From my perspective, I feel, because of my experience, and maybe this was brought up a bit earlier, you feel that when you come into a team, you're supporting a team on a transaction. In my case, tends to be transactions whilst bringing together the wealth of experience you had from private practice and in-house at a strategic level in many different guises, I think, because you do different kinds of transactions of your career. And then you bring it to an organization where just when they need it, and you get to, you get asked, and one of the benefits of being a consultant contractor is you haven't got the fear with, you know, asking questions, because you should have the legacy knowledge. You may be, you know, criticized for asking questions if you're trying to prove yourself to all your peers and to grow in that organization. You can come in with that demeanor, and it gets received very well. And like we had before, I think you can challenge the way things are done, and people do respond to it quite well because you're an external person. You kind of strike that balance between being the external private practice lawyer because they see you coming from Allen and Overy to an extent, and being the in-house role where you're guiding commercially about decision making and processes, which you've seen elsewhere. So I found, luckily, in the last, in the last 3 places that I've been since being an employee, that people really respect that point of view and want that from you, and then they put you up to do all kinds of things that they may well not want everybody to do who's within their team, but because you're slightly external again, they don't mind doing it to you. You could present at some meeting, or you could do whatever. You have the freedom to do those things. So that's how I see the difference with the consulting contracting analysis from my experience of having used them in the past.
I've got to ask you, Greg, because I think those are great examples. Is there ever a time when somebody asks you to do something or asks you a question, you've got absolutely no idea what the answer is? And what do you do? What do you do, Greg?
Every day. I mean, I think, you've taking the last 2 examples with my Peerpoint contracts. One was helping on an acquisition of a life insurance business from one bank to a financial services organization. And I'd never dealt in life insurance before, right? But, I understood what was going on after it was explained to me. And again, going back to the open, honest conversations when you go in, they chose to have me come on board for, based on those discussions, and obviously my background from my CV, but more from the discussions about what I think I could help them with. And it was that they saw of value, rather than the fact that I really understood how life insurance businesses work. So, and in my current role now, with an IT vendor, I have very limited IT vendor experience, but most of the people who work there started as M&A lawyers. It's a lot of negotiating and understanding how to manage stakeholders. So if you rest on the fact that you are capable and can solve the problems, and you are able to ask questions, you find that you negotiate internally to gather the information you need to then answer the questions. And then you get the really curly ones, where someone has given you a task, like I got, to deal with a Colombian indemnity guarantee provision, right? It was based in the life insurance sector. How do I deal with that? So, I had the ability to call a Peerpoint partner who is in the banking space, who in fact I knew from before in my career, and we had a conversation about it. It gave me the headline items that I needed to think about, and that was enough for me to go and work out how to deliver something back that was useful. So you do have the benefit, I think Carolyn expressed earlier, that you can rely on your support base at Allen and Overy. If you feel comfortable and confident calling them, you will get that response. I've had good responses from many questions like that. So you do, it also gives you the confidence. So you then walk back into the client room, and you start talking about this particular issue as though you're well versed. 50% of it is that, what they don't know that you don't know. But you know that we've got confidence in what you're delivering. A partner at Allen Overy said, these are the high points, to cover those, you'll be okay. So that's another way.
That's really helpful, and I'm going to spring back over to Annemiek, because as Annemiek said earlier, she's at a more junior side of her career, and I know, Greg, you've been around a little bit longer. So Annemiek, I'm really interested for you as well. So you spoke earlier about having a general background and how you were working in an area that wasn't necessarily immediately related. So how did you manage that in terms of, you know, if somebody coming into a placement, a more junior end, how did you manage that kind of that learning and that support?
Well, I think it's mentioned, everyone's mentioned it already, but managing expectations is very important. Be open so they know what I can and can't do. I think being a bit mid-level lawyer and coming in, it kind of teaches a lot, like teaches yourself a lot about yourself. So you kind of mature in that sense that you know what you don't know. Very Socrates, but yeah. So basically, if I really don't know something, then you just say, oh yeah, like Peerpoint has the backing of Overy, of course. So there's a massive database I've been able to dive into, especially with a civil law background. I've done common law deals, but I'm not an expert. So even in that, there's a wealth of information that they can point you to literature, or if you're a bit in a hurry, you just call someone, and that helps as well. So yeah, I really felt the support of Overy there, and yeah, maintaining open communication lines. And but sometimes, to be fair, like an in-house lawyer, what I've seen, this is my first in-house role as well, they sometimes just need you to sign off on things rather than really give a detailed explanation of, you know, what the Supreme Court said in 1815, right? They don't care. They might care in a footnote when you do like your more advisory roles when you're in-house, but over here they just need yes or no. So in that sense, I found that in my role I was a bit more of a business partner, and that really more of an entrepreneurial role I had than a really like super technical lawyer. So in that sense, it's slightly different from Greg, but yeah, always I know that A&L has your back, so that's very nice. And yeah. So
it's really you know, from everybody, is that kind of continuation of growing your career in different ways. You know, Annemiek, you mentioned kind of being more entrepreneurial, being more business focused, kind of having access to the business, you know, getting involved in things you may not normally have been involved in. So kind of continuing to grow and move and change your career. I'd really like, I'm gonna go over to Annemiek. What advice would you give someone considering legal consulting as somebody who's just starting out? So what have you garnered so far in your time?
Good question. You have to be, I think there are a couple of things to be comfortable with. You need to be, I think, being financially stable, knowing that you can take on the flexibility of this. I think, you know, it's a different mindset going into it, which you have to be prepared for, and having to be prepared for the, with flexibility, it goes both ways, doesn't it? They also need the flexibility. And so, for example, you don't know when you're going to start, or you don't know when your next assignment's going to be, and you don't know what your gut's going to be. There's only so much that's going to be in your control. So I think there's a different mindset to take on with that, which I'm still sort of figuring that one out. Compared to when you're in private practice, and you know, you've got your ladder there and you've got your full-time role. So I think that's just something to make sure you're comfortable with and ready for with coming on. But with all of this, you know, one of the benefits is for me, I think, working with someone like yourself, where you have a career coach. You know, you don't always have that in a full-time role. So that's one of the big benefits with Peerpoint. And as everyone says, you have all the I kind of want to say sort of hand holding. You know, you've got that, you can call someone up, you can feel confident in what you're doing. So that part I'm really looking forward to when I go into it. But I do think, like I say, that mindset aspect of it has taken me a little bit of time these last couple of weeks to kind of just get used to that. but an exciting way at the same time.
Fantastic. Jennifer, I'm going to ask you the same question. What advice would you give to someone considering legal consulting?
I think same as Anik. I think as lawyers, we are more risk averse in our nature. So I think a lot of my peers, when I speak to them, I'm actually the only consultant amongst my peers, and we started training in 2010. So most of us are in the legal business for about 10 years. So a lot of them are at the crossroad of thinking whether to go in-house or stay on to try and become a partner, which is nearly impossible these days, or move in-house, and whether to stick on a less challenging role in-house. Well, it's different from a private practice role, not saying it's less challenging, but the mindset is in-house is maybe more work-life balance, but it's still sticking to a long role in the long run. I think Peerpoint or flexible legal consulting is for someone who's looking to expand, like they can go in-house or they can work with private practice, they can try both sides or be more entrepreneurial, or they need to get out of their comfort zone and also be able to be happy with the fact that they get the flexibility, and also they may not be earning as much as in a private role, private practice. Yeah.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm just aware of time. Time is flying by, as it always does in these situations. And I'd really like to, just as a final focus before I hand over to Georgiana, who I know has many questions to share with the panel, is just hear a little bit about top tips, top predictions for 2021 in your markets, because we've got such a wide range of markets covered here with everybody. So I'm going to start with Jane. What's your top prediction for 2021, which is sadly quite just around the corner?
It is, and it's a difficult one actually, because you know, to get out my crystal ball, and with this year being the way it was, I mean, who would have ever expected? I think it's difficult to say. I think I'll focus just here in Singapore. I think we're going to just at the micro level still see a bit of tension between the big focus in Singapore, for those of you who are on the call. There's this discussion ongoing around foreign talent and the local workforce. And I think that that's going to be an ongoing discussion that's going to be very much front and center of things here in Singapore. And I think that could also play up perhaps in the consulting space as well. So I think it's very much a case of watch this space and see which way the wind will blow.
And Jane, is that something you can see? Obviously, that's something that's happening right now. Is it something that there's a particular end date in sight for that, in terms of?
I don't think so. I think it's an ongoing discussion that, you know, that I think the government here has obviously got some views on the matter, and then obviously Singapore citizens have a view on the matter, and then foreign talent has a view on the matter as well. So it's quite an all-encompassing topic here in Singapore at the moment that it's definitely going to consume a lot more airspace as well as we go forward.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. Sahar, how about from you? What's your top prediction for the market in 2021, with so much going on in that side of the world and in the UK?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So both in the UK and the US, I think, you know, particularly given the way that this year has been, and looking at it from just the consultancy perspective, given how people's working conditions have changed, I expect that next year you're going to see maybe, you know, many more people interested in exploring the absolute flexibility that they can with their careers in the legal profession. You know, when I started working in capital markets as a consultant and said I wanted to work from home and I didn't want to come into the office, everyone thought that it was you know, outrageous that I was able to do it. And you know, now we know that we can do almost anything remotely, and it's absolutely possible. And so, you know, it'll be interesting to see the shifts next year for people's personal careers.
Thanks, Sahar. I'm just kind of, as we draw towards the end of the hour, I'm just kind of really reflecting on some of the things I've heard. You know, the reason that people have made the choices they've made to move into legal consulting has been quite varied, but overall it's a desire for flexibility and to find that career satisfaction, that work-life balance. I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of questions for all of you. I know that I actually had a lot more questions to ask you as well. Thank you for your time, guys. And I'm going to hand over to Georgiana, who I'm sure is going to pick up with some questions for you.
Thank you, Donna. We actually have received a lot of questions. So I have chosen a few that might perhaps give way to some a little bit more helpful advice, especially to more of those that are newer to consulting. So we actually had quite a few questions around compensation and the financial implications. And I know Anake touched on this a little bit earlier with regards to her being more of a new joiner to our panel. So I thought I might direct this question to Greg, which is, how are consultants manage the financial implications of consulting since there is uncertainty of placements?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's one of your I suppose, pains that you have to manage when you switch over to doing this kind of work. I'd say from my experience is all I can talk to. From my experience, I found it comparable. So, you know, private practice, you know, before you get to partner, unless you're going up to partner, there'll be a bracket depending if you know which firm you're working for. And you'll be getting the top bracket of a top senior associate if you moved from that level to consulting, I would imagine. From in-house, very similar experience from a listed, reasonably large listed organization as a senior corporate counsel, moving to consulting, very comparable. Depending on your bonus structures, you may be slightly better off one year than the other. So from my experience, it's pretty comparable. You have to work it out slightly differently. I engage myself through an incorporated legal practice. So there are costs associated with doing that. But at the same time, you know, you're running a business and you can run your own accounts the way that suits you. So there are advantages to doing that. In addition, there is flexibility. I have had a couple of my own clients give me small amounts of work, which potentially could be lucrative in the future, but for the first 2 years of doing it, there's a little bit of extra that you can collect that way, which is also quite motivating. And the downtime side, well, I've honestly found it not too bad at all. I had one period just when COVID hit where I wondered how long it would take to get the next role, as I decided to go and do something quite different, and then that got frozen, and I went back and checked what roles were going, and it took about a month or so to get the next thing moving. But during that period, I was fearful. How long does this last for? And I've only used Peerpoint. You know, you're not tied with one particular organization. With Peerpoint anyway, you're not tied with just using Peerpoint. You can go to many other providers of similar flexible working arrangements and consultancy arrangements, and that'll expand your ability to get work. But it didn't take that long. So I think my message out there is you've got to get used to the fact that you're not an employee. You haven't got your 20 days leave and that's it. At the same time, you know, you've got the opportunity to choose whether you want to take longer leave and take a bigger risk on getting the work. But if you just take a deep breath, I found that it comes pretty well and it's quite successful.
Thank you, Greg. That's really helpful advice. And one of our next questions was, what advice do our consultants have on best positioning themselves for a pipeline of assignments, which is a little bit on the contrary? And I thought I'd direct this question to you, Amrik.
in terms of positioning yourself for a pipeline of assignments, and I'm assuming by that the questioner is talking about having an assignment lined up fairly soon after an assignment comes to an end, such that there's a regular flow of income. Obviously, some of that is down to market forces, and as Greg has already pointed out, that's just something we have to accept when stepping into the foray of consulting work. But there is also a lot that you can do, particularly during downtime, to ensure that you are front and center of your client base and also the legal community that you're part of. Just as an example, in my case, I currently do not have an assignment. In fact, I'm going to be studying drama, so that will put me in a bit of a challenging position to take on an assignment. But there's an awful lot that you can do, and one of those, picking up on an earlier theme, is to make sure that you understand your branding and that you present your branding to your client base. If you've already had clients, or if you have target clients in mind who you already have relationships with, maintaining those relationships such that they don't forget about you and that they understand what value that you can bring to the table. So keeping that marketing ongoing. Of course, during COVID, that's not so easy to do. But I have found, for example, with previous clients, we stayed in regular contact via Zoom, WhatsApp, via email. In fact, a previous client invited me to some Zoom drinks that their team were having at the bank that I worked at. So take those opportunities to reach out to your clients and check in with them. I think that's incredibly helpful. And also plug into the legal community that you're part of. So if you're a Peerpoint consultant, stay in touch with the Peerpoint team, find out what's going on, what is the market saying. Do you need to consider repositioning yourself and upskilling yourself in certain areas that you may not have considered before? The key thing from my perspective to have a pipeline of work is to adopt a really open mind to what could come your way and to really understand the opportunities in front of you. And as a consultant, there's a lot of opportunities in front of you. So yeah, that's what I would advise.
Okay, great. And the next question will touch a little bit on the training that we offer, but also how else consultants are able to maintain their continued training. So whether that might be legal education credits and also staying relevant and staying up to date with legal developments. Jane, I think you might be able to answer this.
Sure. Actually, that's I've actually had first-hand experience of that because I'm qualified and I hold a practicing certificate in both England and Wales and also in New South Wales and Australia. And so I do have CPD requirements that I need to maintain. And so the great thing about being associated with Peerpoint and on the panel is that, as everyone has mentioned before, you can tap into all of the resources of A&O. So there have been times where I have actually been behind with my CPDs and I've realised, oh, there's a deadline coming up. So I've actually gone into the A&O offices in Singapore and just sat there and watched the number of videos that I've needed to do. And I've also attended live, pre-COVID days, live training sessions in the lunch hour at A&O's offices in Singapore. So it's been fantastic. That's just something I don't need to worry about because I can effectively tap into the whole A&O CPD program for wherever that I need to satisfy my requirements or my professional training. In addition to that, because I'm with a bank at the moment, there's also a lot of internal training at the bank as well. So I'm able to kind of double down on that as well. So because I'm also getting a lot of training internally at the bank as well. So I think there's been absolutely no issue in managing that process.
Okay, great. And we're running out of time very soon, but I thought I might end with another question, which is more of a reflective question for you, Sahar, and that is, what's the biggest lesson you've learned as a consultant?
That's a good question. I think the biggest lesson I've learned is how much your own personal branding matters, which I think has been echoed in a lot of what people have said. And you know, when you look at yourself as the brand, and when you shift into consultancy, it's a little bit different than when you're in private practice and you look at yourself as the brand. And you know, really focusing on that, and then developing your relationships based on that, and what it is that you want to be as a consultant, has been you know, has been a great learning experience, and has really proven to me to be something that, you know, really you can do exactly what you want to do. If you believe in your own brand, and other people do as well, you really can do exactly what it is you want to be doing.
And that's really good. So thank you for your advice, Sahar. And also thank you to Jane, Emric, and Greg for answering these additional questions. We did have a lot of questions, and it was great to see this level of interest. However, as we're running out of time, I would like now to pass the virtual floor back to Carolyn, who can share more on her thoughts, her observations, as well as a glimpse to the future of Peerpoint.
Thanks, Georgiana. And thank you to everyone who's answered the questions and participated so actively. As Georgiana said, there's lots of questions coming through the chat, which is awesome. And actually, the questions we're seeing are the questions lawyers have as they go through the journey of understanding what consulting is, meeting with another consultant, and the questions they'd ask, and the conversation they'd have with the Peerpoint team. So we understand this is a journey, and that for many people, it will be something that they'll come and explore, and they'll think, find out some information, and then they'll go, it's not the right time for me, and that's absolutely fine. And then there's other people that will stick out the role they're at, and then as circumstances change, will want to re-engage. So we really encourage you to engage and find out what legal consulting can be, and whether it's the right thing for you at this point in your career. As Amrit touched on earlier, transparency is a huge part of the relationship Peerpoint engenders with their consultants. And we will equally not be afraid to say to you, we don't think this is the right point for you to consult because of where you are in terms of your seniority or your skill set, or that your circumstances at the moment may not be the right thing for you. Because the last thing we want to do is put you in a place where it's not going to be a great experience. So we'll be very honest about that. We've talked about a lot of things that include how to have a portfolio career, how to build relationships with clients so you've got a pipeline of work, how do you transition from one organisation to another, in some cases how you can be a private practice lawyer and an in-house lawyer, and how you can balance those two things. And what I'd say is that's all part of learning what a Peerpoint consultant does and what a legal consulting career can be. And I'd encourage you to reach out to Peerpoint. We have a really useful website that includes insights from consultants and their stories. Some of the photos you'll see on that website are the people you've heard from today. There's also an avenue for clients to understand how to access talent. What I would say, in addition to the people you've met today, and we really focused this conversation on talent, is that we have another group of our business and our team who focus on developing work for our consultants. So you've got the backing of A&O, you've got the client base of A&O who are generating opportunities, and you've also got a Peerpoint client development team who are every day working with clients to understand their resourcing needs, how they're evolving their offering to meet their businesses' legal risk and compliance requirements. And they can, they're playing a role of being in the market every day. So I've got great insights into where the demand for skills is, what you might need to do, where you might like to pivot, and they're building a work, a flow of work for you. As we've mentioned, there's no guarantee, but the aim is for us, if you're wanting to be working fairly regularly, that we're encouraging and finding you an opportunity to do that. Last but not least, if you have been sitting on this call and thinking, actually my in-house team needs some support and some help, and maybe we would benefit from an in-house a Peerpoint consultant, do get in touch. As you've heard, got great experience, can be pulled in to work on a project or an event, an activity that's maybe a one-off, and that your in-house team doesn't have the skill or the bandwidth to deal with right now. As we all know, we've also got headcount restraints, and sometimes bringing in a consultant is a way of getting a project across the line, or demonstrating a business case for why you may need a permanent team member in the future. So we hope to continue the conversation. Do check out our website, and we're also publish lots of articles on LinkedIn, and they explore the reasons consultants are working with us, and also our offering from a client side. So we look forward to continuing the conversation. Rahul, thank you so much for having us and partnering with us in this conversation. To the Peerpoint consultants, thank you. And unless there's anything further, I think that brings our call to an end, Rahul.
So much, Carolyn, and thank you all the panelists and all the attendees for great insights today. I know we had a lot of questions and we couldn't get through all the questions in time, but I've shared Georgiana's email in the chat function. So if you have any further questions, please do get in touch with her. Again, thank you very much to Peerpoint for co-hosting this webinar with us. And shortly after this, there will be a short questionnaire, which I'll ask everyone to fill in. It'll just it'll give us some information or insights on how to do more of these webinars. So thank you very much today, and have a great day ahead. Cheers. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.